Hello, everyone, and many thanks for joining this stream. News summary from Moscow program, second update for a day. As always, I'm streaming on my channels on YouTube and Rumble simultaneously. And in case you have a question or want to highlight any commentary, or by the way, if you want to support my work, you can use super chat feature on Rumble, dear friends. And of course, I will react on it after a news segment. I try my best to prepare interesting news program for you, dear friends. And if you find it informative and interesting, please like the video and leave some commentary. This might help possibly to deal with the algorithm. And so yes, if there will be any questions through other support platforms, I will try to react on that too. Okay, that's been said. Let's start today's news summary, dear friends. And first of all, let me give you this report based on the Russian Defense Ministry and all the media outlets here in Russia report about it, that there is a further progress of the Russian armed forces on the battlefield. Zhlyad newspaper, for example, as many others reported, that Russian troops liberated Ivanovka settlement in Dnipropetrovsk region and Pavlovka settlement in Zaporozhye regions of the front line. Let me show you on the map where these settlements are located, and simultaneously I will give you some short summary on the developments on a battlefield. So when it comes to Zaporozhye region, settlement that was liberated is this one, Pavlovka, this settlement, dear friends. And as you can see, Russian troops are basically on the outskirts of simultaneously several villages entire this line of the settlements in Zaporozhye region. And I guess it will take maybe no longer than 7-10 days. And all these settlements, Ribne, Privolne, Uspianovka, will be under full Russian control. Then Russian troops most likely will establish control over these tiny settlements like Sladkaya, Ravnopolye, Yablokova, Novoe. And after that settlement, there is basically nothing left until main supply and this highway, by the way, main supply and support line that connects Gulyai-Polye garrison of Kiev regime with, let's say, Dnipropetrovsk region. Also, previously, I did report about progress of the Russian forces in direction of Zaporozhye sector. And for example, you already know that Poltavka settlement was liberated literally like 2 days ago. Settlement of Akhotnichye, this one liberated a few days ago. Novonikolaevka liberated, and clearing operation is being finalized. So progress of the Russian armed forces is very significant in Zaporozhye. And when it comes to the Dnipropetrovsk region, this is the settlement, dear friends, that Russian Defense Ministry confirmed as liberated by Russian forces. Ivanovka settlement. At this point, I lost count how many settlements were liberated in Dnipropetrovsk region already. It's around 2 dozen at this point. Just yesterday, isn't it? I reported about progress of the Russian armed forces in direction of settlement of Zlagada. And according to some sources, Russian troops already are in control of northern part of Zlagada. According to other sources, entire this settlement in Dnipropetrovsk region is being liberated. Also, dear friends, I reported earlier about surprising attack of Russian armed forces in direction of Novaya Takmachka settlement. Significant number of Russian troops, mechanized units, basically entered the settlement and established control over the quite a wide area, as you can see on this map, dear friends, as in shadow, over the quite a wider area in this settlement. And according to some reports, Russian troops also established control over the former prisoner that is located on a southeastern part of this village. Additional confirmations are needed, of course, about this development. But in any case, this attack on Nova Takmachka can be indicator about beginning of the final preparations by Russian armed forces to conduct offensive operation in direction of Orykhov settlement, which is another stronghold of Kiev regime in the Zaporozhye sector. There is two major strongholds in the central part of this sector right now, and on the eastern part, one is Gulyai-Pole, one is Orekhov, and of course, main stronghold of Kiev regime in Zaporozhye sector is Zaporozhye city itself, that will be, of course, liberated. Potentially, Russian troops will reach Zaporozhye city itself before end of this year. Also, dear friends, earlier I reported about progress of the Russian armed forces in Kherson region, and well, videos are now circulating on internet about Russian troops arriving on Karabel island, Karabel district, basically, which is a part of Kherson city, by the way, but is isolated from main body of the town. Also, reports were coming in about not just battles inside the Karabel district itself, but on the northern side of Kherson, on outskirts, reports were that Russian troops established control over their Pridniprovsk settlement and over their Sadova settlement, although, of course, more time is needed, more confirmations, because at this point, whole this area is in fog of war, and it is very difficult to say exactly what is going on or to know. But videos, at least videos surfaced with the deployment of Russian troops on Karabel district. When it comes to other sectors, dear friends, of course, in the DPR, one of the main strongholds is still Pokrovsk-Mirnograd agglomeration. Russian troops are advancing significantly in Pokrovsk, and only, according to some reports, only northern parts of this city, on the northern side of railway, that cuts city in half, basically, almost. Northern part is remaining under control of Kiev regime, and Kiev regime's forces are trying their best, according to some reports, to maintain their positions in this area. Kiev regime is not allowing them to retreat, because they know perfectly well, once Kiev regime's forces will begin retreating from this northern part of Pokrovsk, garrison of Kiev regime in Mirnograd gonna collapse immediately. Most likely, units of Kiev regime's forces in Mirnograd will run away without waiting for any authorization at all, because they will know once Pokrovsk garrison has failed and completely and run away, Mirnograd garrison is doomed, and probably at least some units of Kiev regime will try to run away without any authorization. When it comes to latest updates in this direction, well, yesterday I reported about liberation of settlement of Promin on eastern side of this most southern district of Mirnograd, and videos surfaced, dear friends, on number of Telegram channels when a Russian armored vehicle was struck by drone in this position. Location was basically designated, and well, if Russian armored personnel carrier was struck by FPV in this area, that means Russian troops already began military operations inside this most southern district of the Mirnograd, and Russian troops are approaching this area from three directions at this point: from southern direction, from southern eastern, and the northern eastern directions. So I guess maybe before end of even next week, there will be significant presence of the Russian armed forces in this area of the city. When it comes to Pokrovsk-Mirnograd in general, well, if we zoom out a little bit, you can see, dear friends, that this entire agglomeration, these two cities and surrounding settlements that still are under direct or partial control of Kiev regime, is in general operational encirclement. When it comes to Konstantinovka direction, I did not see no reports about some major changes on the line of contact in this area. I guess Russian troops are preparing ground for further operation in direction of city. Another stronghold of Kiev regime in DPR is, of course, Seversk, dear friends. And lately we are receiving more and more reports, not necessarily about Seversk itself or surrounding areas, but about Yampol and Liman. And Russian troops basically, maybe they switch focus on Liman, because during the previous weeks, almost on daily basis, we were receiving information about progress of the Russian armed forces in Seversk direction. And now, literally on daily basis, we are receiving news about progress of the Russian armed forces in Liman, Yampol direction. Number of sources already are reporting that Stavki settlement in Liman direction is under Russian control. Russian troops are conducting clearing operation in Drobishevo settlement, and the number of Russian troops, by the way, was actually spotted in Liman itself. And reports are that Russian militaries are using basically this forestry to enter a city, and maybe this is correct. Obviously, I'm not there and hard to tell. But in any case, Russian troops are approaching Liman now from northern, western, northern, and northern eastern directions. And it is very much possible that we will see liberation of Liman even earlier than Seversk. It all depends, of course, what kind of plans Russian general staff has. Then is, of course, Kharkov region. In LPR, dear friends, there is nothing left to liberate. All settlements in LPR already were liberated by Russian forces. So when it comes to Kharkov region, one of the main areas of battles is, of course, Kupiansk, and Russian troops are further advancing. Central part of on the right bank of the Dnieper River is already under Russian control, and based on statements of military experts, one should expect a complete collapse of Kiev regime's defense lines in Kupiansk at any given point. Everyone is saying that Kiev regime's garnison in Kupiansk is defenseless. They just have no chance to maintain their defense lines for a long period of time. Another area of battles, active military operations in the Kharkov region is, of course, Volchansk direction, and Russian troops are advancing on a left bank of the, or let's say on southern side of the city, which is divided by Volchia River, and videos are surfaced, dear friends, about Russian troops and their operations in this location that you see right now in this some industrial area, or there is some private housing, right? And if we zoom out a little bit, you can see that this is all outside of most western, basically outskirt, let's say, of southern part of Volchansk. So if Russian troops already are operating here, one might argue that this forestry is under Russian control, and soon we will see probably simultaneous offensive on remaining parts of Volchansk that is still controlled by Kiev regime's forces from northern, eastern, and western flanks. Let's see how will situation develop. And there was no reports about some major developments in Lipsy direction. Some sort of operational pause is taking place there. And this is it when it comes to a short summary of the situation on the battlefield. Let's continue now with some other news. I already reported about liberation of Ivanovka and Pavlovka. Next news that I want to share with you, dear friends, is one that I mentioned during today's first update, which is based on a report of Sergei Lebedev, coordinator of Nikolaev Underground. And the underground is being called the partisans, basically, pro-Russian partisans that are operating on the Kiev-controlled territory. And news is very interesting, I will say, because according to Lebedev, Russian forces struck NATO officers' command bunker in the Kiev region. There is information about the destruction of command bunker along with their officers, including those from NATO countries. In addition, their fighters hit workshop producing drone engines near the Zhuliany airport and the training camp of the Ukrainian armed forces in Borispol. Zhuliany and Borispol, it's Kiev, basically outskirts of Kiev itself. And during the day, I was looking for some additional information about this strike on a bunker where NATO officers were located, but unfortunately, either I missed the news or there was no additional reports on that. Maybe tomorrow. I wonder if some additional specific information will become available, from which countries these NATO officers were, how many casualties they suffered, these NATO officers, and so on, right? If any update, of course, I will share additional information about it in next reports. And also, dear friends, while staying on topic of battles in zone of special military operation, maybe somewhat surprisingly, on Sky News, Western propaganda outlet, by the way, on Sky News, James Cardon was invited, former US State Department advisor on Russia. So he knows, supposed to know a thing or two about Russia, and he unpleasantly surprised with his statements, host of the Sky News program. Let me give you some short videos, dear friends, about what James Cardon had to say. So it's a quite rare occasion when on Western TVs, by the way, you are hearing some objective information. I was a bit surprised about it. Maybe you will be surprised too. But let's listen first what James Cardon had to say.
Is really crazy. And in the United States, you have all sorts of media outlets saying, Trump is denying Zelensky a potentially game-changing weapon, and, utterly false and utterly ridiculous. It's not a game-changing weapon any more than all the other weapons that were
He's talking about Tomahawk missiles, by the way.
Said to be game-changing weapons have not changed the game. We've heard the same thing when the Ukrainians asked for HIMARS, when they asked for Patriot systems, when they asked for ATACMS and F-16s. They haven't changed the game. And basically, the war is lost. And the sooner that the Ukrainians come to this realization, the better off they'll be. And Putin seems to me to have a reasonable deal in place. Ukraine cannot join NATO, but Ukraine can join the EU. That seems absolutely a fair bargain to me.
But they also have to concede land.
Of course they do. But again, the land that they will be ceding, they themselves have been attacking since 2014. The Ukrainians are being a bit disingenuous here. They want they claim to want the land in the Donbass, eastern Ukraine, but they don't want the ethnic Russian citizens on that land. So they've been doing everything that they can to disenfranchise those people for the past 30 years. So it's time to be honest. Putin, in a way, is giving the Ukrainians what they want, which is a Ukraine for ethnic Ukrainians. And that would be a way to get rid of, which they've wanted to do, the ethnic Russians. It's not something that is often said in public, but it happens to be the truth.
You see, quite interesting. I will disagree with some comments of this American expert. I don't believe there is any ethnic Ukrainians whatsoever. Political Ukrainianism is a thing, of course. I'm not denying that. And British aristocracy and German aristocracy spent almost like 2 centuries, maybe more than that, to create this political Ukrainianism on the territories that was at some point in the past was occupied by Poland, and the Poles were calling that area Ukraina, which in Polish and in Russian means outskirt, right? And at one point, some 200 years ago, approximately, British aristocracy, British royalties, come up with the idea of creating this political Ukrainianism to put her in the brains of the people on this Ukraina territory that was at that point held by Poland, idea that they are not Poles, not Hungarians, not Russians, but they are Ukrainians now. And then Germans began working on this topic also. It was a Bismarck, isn't it, who infamously said that if you want to weaken Russia, push for this political Ukrainianism, divide these people, right? And unfortunately, after decades and decades and decades of active work on this political Ukrainianism, they did manage to brainwash enough people that now you're going to see someone with a name and surname Ivan Ivanov somewhere in a Lvov who will say, if you ask, I mean, who are you ethnically? That person might say Ukrainian, when this is total nonsense, right? This is just total freaking nonsense. He cannot be Ukrainian, period, right? There is no such ethnicity as Ukrainian, by the way. Never existed, will never exist. Only political Ukrainianism, right? But nevertheless, so I disagree on that point with this American expert who is saying that, well, Putin is offering to Ukrainians exactly what they want, Ukraine for Ukrainians. No, Putin. What Putin is doing is liberating historical Russian land and liberating Russians, people of Russian world, right? Including our brainwashed brothers and sisters, right? That will eventually, undergo some denazification programs and will rejoin community if they have not committed crimes, obviously, against civilians, against humanity, against Russia, and so on. And the other point that I will disagree with this American expert is that, I think time is running out when Moscow was offering NATO, basically, and NATO proxy regime quite a fair agreement that West is recognizing basically Russian legitimacy, Russian sovereignty over their new regions, and on rest of the territories, as long as the so-called Ukraine remains neutral, as long as the rights, fundamental rights of Russian people, Russian speakers are protected, as long as the Orthodox Church is protected, well, Moscow will respect that statehood, right? And even provide some security guarantees. But yet again, time for this very generous offer from Russian side is running out, I think. And well, if you ask me today, I think this war that West is waging against Russia will end when Russian troops will reach borders of the Western Ukraine. That's how it's going to be, dear friends. I think no matter how much we all want to see end of this bloody conflict, unfortunately, globalists and globalist-controlled regimes in Europe are not even considering de-escalation. They are pushing for further prolongation of this war, which means that Russian side will have no option but to continue special military operation until Russian troops will liberate whole of historical Russian territory, and until Russian troops will reach borders of the Western Ukraine. I know historians will argue that, well, Western Ukraine, if we are talking about history, is also Russian territory. And yes, historically speaking, if we go find history, yes, was Russian territory, but then for quite a long time, it was held by Poland. There was some demographic changes in the area, and right now, I think not that many people here in Russia will oppose if Russian troops will liberate all the people and all the territories until Western Ukraine. And when it comes to Western Ukraine itself, which is a major stronghold of Ukrainian political Ukrainianism, by the way, major stronghold of Ukrainian Nazis and the fascists, well, let the Poles, Hungarians, Slovaks, Romanians deal with them, right? Those Western parts of Ukraine was become part of Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic after Second World War, right? And so let those countries, Western neighbors of this so-called Ukraine, reclaim these territories and deal with those Nazis. there, right? Russia will liberate all the rest. And that's how it's going to be. That's how it's going to be. I have no doubts about it. If there was any slightest, even slightest indicators that maybe globalists will consider the escalation, okay, I will say that maybe this conflict will end in a relatively short time. West will accept Russian offer, Russian proposal, but unfortunately, this is not happening. Globalists will continue until they can, and therefore, this war will end when Russian troops will reach the borders of the Western Ukraine. But nevertheless, this American expert went also to share with their viewers of the Sky News, no any less important and interesting information about state of Kiev regime's armed forces. And let me give you, dear friends, this another video, short video about it. Just let's listen to it.
Loss. What about reports that Russia's on the brink, that any further pressure that can be applied to them will lead to them running out of money? They can't continue this incredibly vicious assault that seems to have escalated in recent months on Ukraine indefinitely.
In fact, the opposite is true. My sources tell me that the ratio of Ukrainian to Russian dead is 36-1. So it's the Ukrainians who are approaching 1 million or so casualties. The numbers that people are told by the mainstream media in the United States, particularly the New York Times and the Washington Post, bear about as much resemblance to reality as the numbers that the government told Americans what was going on in the Vietnam War. So the war of attrition that Russia did begin in 2022 has been largely successful. And it seems to me that it's Ukraine that's on the brink of disaster, not Russia.
Okay, fascinating stuff. James Carden, we really appreciate your time on the show this morning.
I guess for
James,
many
US
viewers
State
of
Department
Sky
advisor on
News,
Russia policy. Thank you.
this information would become as a surprise, maybe even shocking. But yet again, that's what happens when you are only taking news from Western MSM. That's what happened. People are misled, have no idea what's going on, and whenever they hear truth, by the way, this truth is either shocking or they are just struggling. Those people are struggling to face the reality and acknowledge the truth, right? So, well, I'm not familiar with this expert from US, but I was also surprised kind of that Sky News invited him, and then he went to actually say the truth as he understood it, right? Some interesting stuff there. Nevertheless, let's continue, dear friends, with some other news also. And well, today, strategic nuclear forces of the Russian Federation conducted their exercises under the leadership of President of Russia, Vladimir Putin. Let me give you some details on that. So, strategic nuclear forces conducted their training exercises under the leadership of President Vladimir Putin. Kremlin reported all tasks have been completed. The press release is stating several air-launched intercontinental ballistic missiles and cruise missiles were launched at their event. The military's deployed complex of Yars intercontinental ballistic missile, submarine nuclear capable submarine Bryansk, which also launched, by the way, sea-based intercontinental ballistic missile Sineva, and also Russian strategical bombers Tu-95MS participated in these exercises. At the meeting with the general staff, the president emphasized that the training is proceeded as planned. So for Russian side, for Russian leadership, this was planned exercises, but for Western so-called elites, this exercise might most likely came as a surprise. Also, dear friends, the launches were monitored by the National Defense Control Centers. The exercises tested the level of training and their practical skills in the troops command, the Kremlin added, and I can give you, dear friends, some video of launch of this YARS intercontinental ballistic missile, which is a land-based continental missile. Many members of our community probably are familiar with this system and have seen quite number of videos of these launches. So that's how it looks basically. Quite something. Quite something. If I remember correctly, each of these ICBMs can carry multiple warheads, multiple nuclear warheads. So each of these missiles can carry multiple nuclear warheads with their, yield like dozens of times greater than in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And these nuclear warheads are thermonuclear weapons, of course, not basic atomic bombs. And just to keep in mind, dear friends, whenever you hear someone in the West is calling for further escalation with Russia, I mean, just show them this video, by the way, and just explain to them that this missile, literally one, that is equipped with multiple nuclear warheads, can leave only radioactive dust and waste, basically, on a territory as big as New York City is, for example. This missile with its several nukes, and there is nothing left from New York. That's how powerful these weapons are, by the way. And everybody that calls for further escalation with Russia in the Western world should keep this in mind. That it would not take much if world goes down, or if Western world continues this down spiral of escalation, when we will reach a nuclear point, and then world is finished. This missile, and anyways, also, as I already said, dear friends, Russian nuclear submarine that was participating in these exercises launched naval intercontinental ballistic missiles successfully. All their launches were success. And maybe this was a message from Moscow to the West that, you know what, know your limits. Don't push through too much, otherwise there are gonna be some consequences for everybody, right? Let's continue, dear friends, with some other news. And what is next here that I have bookmarked? Well, Ministry of Defense announced the deployment of reservists to protect critical facilities. I'm quite sure Western media will report about it, and they will speculate that Russia began mobilization again and that kind of stuff, which is not true. And that's why I want to share information with you so that you will know what is going on. So the document regulating the use of reservists to protect critical facilities applies only to citizens who have voluntarily signed contracts, and does not provide for their participation in special operations, stated Vice Admiral Vladimir Tsimlyansky, Deputy Chief of their main organizational and mobilization directorate of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces. The Defense Ministry's draft law on involving reservists in the protection of the critical infrastructure does not affect all citizens of the country, according to Defense Ministry's Telegram channel. According to Vice Admiral Vladimir Tsimakowski, this applies exclusively to trained and patriotic citizens who have voluntarily signed a contract to serve in the mobilization reserve. He noted that reservists are not active military personnel and continue to work at their primary place of employment, maintaining their civilian status. The bill clarifies the purposes of recruiting reservists. They can be sent to special training camps to protect energy facilities, transport facilities, oil refineries, and other critical infrastructure exclusively within their regions of where they are living. The primary objective is to counter drones. Personnel will be assigned to such a training seasons based on a decree from the Russian president. Unit staff with reservists have already proven effective in repelling drone attacks and ensuring the stable operation of enterprises. According to Tsimakowski, reservists in Russia receive a salary for their time in the reserve and for participating in special training season. They are also provided with the food, clothing, and other provision as required by law. So soon, dear friends, reservists that voluntarily want to participate in protecting strategical infrastructure will be called, will be trained. If they need additional training, probably some would, right? And they will protect strategical infrastructure in those regions where they are living at the moment of call. So don't allow Western propaganda to disinform you. This is not a mobilization, a general mobilization or something like that. No, there is a force, by the way. There are people who volunteer to be in reserves so that if mobilization happens, they will go first. But even if mobilization is not happening, but there is some need, for example, for additional military personnel to protect, let's say, refinery or some other strategical object from drones, then these people can be called. They have already, military experience, little additional training, and they will perfectly be able to deal with whatever tasks they will face. And this is necessary. This is necessary, of course, because we should keep in mind, dear friends, that it's when we say West is waging war against Russia, some people may don't count how many countries this West means, right? It's a 3-4 dozen of countries from Western world, with very few exceptions, that are directly involved in this war against Russian Federation, right? And they are providing their proxy regime and their NATO mercenaries with a numerous volume of weapons, right, including long-range weapons, drones, missiles, and so on. Let's continue with other news. Although, dear friends, before I continue, let me notice for potential new members of community that might watch this live stream first time, that this is an independent media project of mine. And if you like my work, if you want to help me to maintain this project, you can do it through several means. You can donate through PayPal or Boosty platforms. You can subscribe to my Patreon and the Boosty pages. And also there is a crypto option, crypto wallet, in all the links, by the way, under this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. I hope more members will join our Patreon community or community on Boosty. And also during the live streams, of course, there is a super chat which is available on Rumble, and anyone can become premium subscriber on Rumble. Everything, of course, is a great supporter, and there are many thanks to everyone who already supported and continues to support. Thank you very much. And dear friends, well, hopefully, project will receive some support. And let's continue. Let's continue now. What I have bookmarked next? Well, Zelensky, head of this Western-backed terrorist regime in Kiev, Zelensky was and maybe still is in Sweden today, and well, some agreement, preliminary agreement, let's say, was reached between Zelensky and the Swedish government about supply of up to 150, from 100 to 150 Swedish Saab JAS 39E Gripen or Gripen E fighters to this so-called Ukraine. Deal is estimated to be worth more than 10 billion, although according to some reports that I see, first deliveries will take place no earlier than in some 3 years time from now. Maybe this is a deception, maybe something else, maybe Sweden will transfer some other Gripens, older Gripens, to Kiev regime in upcoming weeks or months, and will send its pilots too, because obviously all these Western planes are being piloted by the Western pilots. But in any case, well, as I said, globalists and globalist-controlled regimes, by the way, all over the Western world are doing whatever they can to prolong this war as much as they can, and almost on daily basis we are receiving information that this country is allocating this many billions, that country is allocating this volume of weapons. Today is Sweden plans to transfer 150 Gripens. I don't think this will happen, but nevertheless, that's what statements are about. Also, this clown Zelensky made a number of other statements. This is quote from his statements, by the way. Kiev regime strategies are multi-component defense, such as using Patriot and NASAMS. He is asking for air defenses too. Kiev regime is developing contractor that will also help to obtain no less than 100 Gripens. We will see. Zelensky also stated that he informed the Swedish Prime Minister about energy needs after Russian strike. He began bragging about that as soon as topic of Tomahawk missiles come to live, Putin called Trump. When it comes to that phone conversation, dear friends, I'm quite sure initiative was coming from US. Initiative was coming from US literally a few days before that call take place, like a few days ago. Trump himself said, isn't it, that he would like to talk to Putin. And I think what happened is that his administration contacted the Russian president's administration, and they did arrange this phone call. And if previous call was made by Trump, and that was the case, I believe, by American side, then, well, this time around, the Russian side initiated the call, but it was Trump who expressed willingness or desire to talk to Russian president. That's what happened, I think. Also, by the way, Zelensky stated that for him and his criminal regime, most desired aircrafts are Gripen, F-16, and French Rafales. Gripen is Swedish, F-16 is, of course, US made, and Rafale is a French fighter jet. At this point, Kiev regime, according to reports, operates with US F-16s. Formally, Kiev regime, in reality, it's NATO, by the way. It's NATO pilots, either designated as mercenaries, or maybe some of them even was given citizenship of this so-called Ukraine, right, to allow West to maintain plausible deniability, but it's a NATO pilots. No one should believe that you can take anyone and teach that anyone how to operate with this quite complex equipment like fighter jets are, right, in several months' time. It takes years, brother. It takes years to train pilots. So I don't think there can be any doubts that these planes, F-16s, for example, and French Mirage 2000s that were formally transferred to Kiev regime are actually operated by NATO pilots. And these planes are good planes. I mean, let's make no mistake. F-16 is very capable, fourth-gen fighter jet, fighter bomber. Mirage 2000 is also still quite capable plane, by the way, especially if that plane operates in an area where there is a little or no air defense systems or little or no opposition from enemy hostile aircrafts, right? And well, Gripen, if actually delivered or deployed against Russia, Swedish Gripens also are quite capable planes. At this point, Gripens might be even better than Rafales, by the way. Latest generation of Gripens might actually be better than French Rafale planes in number of areas, right? But I don't think your regime going to receive any Gripens, man. I don't think so. But anyways, Zelensky also went to order its troops, by the way, to Turkey and UK. And you might wonder, what the hell? Why the regime is sending troops to Turkey and the UK? And well, basically to get training for vessels that the regime received from a number of countries. Let me give you some details on that. So Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky has ordered the deployment of troops to Turkey and the United Kingdom to operate Ukrainian naval ships currently based in these two countries. Decision, first announced in September, required parliamentary approval before coming into effect after Zelensky signed it on Wednesday, today that is. Ukraine's once formidable naval force, inherited from the Soviet Union, has suffered years of neglect and losses in its conflict with Russia. The current fleet largely consists of smaller ships donated by foreign backers, many of which are docked outside Ukrainian territory. Zelensky's decree sends 106 personnel to Turkey to man their Hetman Ivan Mazepa, an other class corvette that was laid down in 2021. Once its ongoing trials are completed, it is expected to become the flagship of Ukraine's Navy. In addition, 540 sailors and 20 command officers will be deployed to UK to crew 5 minehunter vessels previously transferred to the regime from British, Dutch, and the Belgium navies. Decree indicates that Ukrainian crews will undergo training before assuming full operational control of these vessels. And well, certain funds have been allocated for that. So yes, soon in Turkey and in UK, Kyiv regime gonna send its sailors, and I think both these countries are legit targets, man. Turkey and UK for Russian Federation. Those shipyards or whatever the place is where those vessels are located are legit target. Although unfortunately, I don't think Putin will authorize strikes on them, not yet at least. But I wonder what these sailors gonna do once they will receive full control over these vessels. They're gonna navigate in Mediterranean around, in case of this Turkish-built vessel, or they're gonna navigate around UK with those 5 mine clearing or mine hunting vessels. They're not gonna be able to enter Black Sea, isn't it? Turkey will allow them to enter the Black Sea, but what next? I don't think they will be able to reach a port of destination on temporarily Kyiv controlled territory. But whatever the case, I think this news deserves some attention, and I did share it. Also, dear friends, let's continue with some other news. And well, these speculations about Russia-US summit, Putin-Trump summit that might take place in Hungary, continues to make headlines. And for example, Szijjártó, foreign minister of Hungary, once again commented on the issue and stated that Hungary continues preparations for the Russia-US summit. And this is quote, "I'm certain that until the peace summit is held, the media will publish dozens of rumors, fakes, and references to unknown officials every day who will talk about why the peace summit will not take place or why it will not take place on such a date." He said on M1 TV, channel, he called for resistance to attempts to deceive and weaken efforts to peacefully resolve the Ukrainian conflict, emphasizing Hungary's readiness to provide a venue for the summit. Szijjártó is expected to discuss summit preparations with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He believes it would be inappropriate to discuss postponing their meeting as a date has not yet been set. So, okay, by the way, I think there will be no Trump-Putin summit in Hungary, definitely not in upcoming weeks or even months or two. But this is my personal opinion, and I'm okay with that, by the way. If Trump wants to talk to Putin, if Trump is ready to pull out the U.S. from this proxy war that West is waging against Russia, in which the U.S. is a leading anti-Russian force, then he should travel to Moscow and have a conversation with the Russian president, because after all, not that long ago, Russian president did travel to U.S., right? In Alaska, in Anchorage, and had a meeting with the Trump. So I don't think it is a reasonable or acceptable risk if Russian president will travel now through hostile airspace to participate in some meeting with the Trump. No, let Trump come to Russia or to, I don't know, Ukraine or, sorry, not the freaking so-called Ukraine, by the way, to Belarus or Kazakhstan, right? But I don't think there are going to be any more meetings between Trump and Putin whatsoever, man. I don't think there are going to be any more meetings between Trump and Putin. There might not be even phone calls between the two. Because at this point, I think most optimistic members of Putin's inner circle probably also are realizing that this is just pure waste of time to talk to anybody from the leadership of the Western countries. Yet again, with the exception of very few people like Hungary, Slovakia, and that's about it, right? So I would not be surprised at all if there are going to be no more, not just direct face-to-face meetings between Putin and Trump, but not even phone calls, because what is the point? It's a totally pointless stuff, isn't it? And I'm not saying that Moscow and Washington should not be engaged in the talks at all. No, but these talks, Russia can maintain diplomatic open door for diplomacy, and medium or not middle class bureaucrats in foreign ministry are well capable of conducting such talks, I think, with their American counterparts. There is no need for upper echelon of leadership, either in a foreign ministry or Russian Federation, to waste their time, really, on these pointless talks with freaking morons that represent US, right? But nevertheless, or any other Western country, by the way, yet again, with very few exceptions. Nevertheless, Deputy Foreign Minister of the Russian Federation, Sergei Ryabkov, stated that preparations for the meeting of the presidents of the Russia and US are ongoing. He also did not confirm that Moscow and Washington exchanged documents in the non-paper format regarding Ukraine. And there was Western media reports about some non-paper format documents being exchanged, or Russia transferred some document on that matter with the Russian proposals. Ryabkov is not confirming this, and he is a deputy foreign minister, potentially future foreign minister of the Russian Federation, as some say. right? And he's a high-ranking, I mean, he's a professional diplomat, right? And I can understand why he will say that, well, some preparations are ongoing. Okay, we can count for some preparations, even absence of progress in some sense. If sides are talking, that can be counted in some sense as a sort of a preparations. I mean, we are in talks, right? We don't have any agreements yet, but at least we are in talks. So in the diplomatic language, that can be interpreted as something of positive. So okay, Ripkov said some work is ongoing to organize this meeting between two presidents, but it will not take place. I have no doubts about it, by the way. I mean, mark my word. I don't think there will be face-to-face meeting between Putin and Trump. And I don't think it's necessary because Trump is definitely too weak. He is, and his administration is in no position. They are in no position, by the way, to force globalists and globalist control regimes in Europe to back down, right? And therefore, whatever agreements, theoretically speaking, might be reached between Moscow and Washington in regards to Ukrainian crisis cannot be fulfilled by Western side, because yet again, Trump is too weak, his administration is too weak, and even if they want to, they are in no position to force basically globalists and globalist control regimes in Europe to back down. So what is the point in talks then, in that case? I mean, you tell me, dear friends, maybe I'm missing something and don't understand much, but yet again, if you cannot influence globalists, the so-called European elites and so on, then what is the point if we have agreement? I mean, me and US or Russia and US, you can't do nothing anyways, right? So it is what it is, man. And therefore, there are going to be no more meetings, possibly not even phone calls between the two. We will see. We will see. And meanwhile, lately, by the way, relationships between Hungary and Poland are really escalating. And usually, it's always there a case of reckless statements and the behavior of Polish elites, right? And as you know, just yesterday or the day before, Polish so-called foreign minister Radzislaw Sikorski stated that if Putin somehow ends up in Polish airspace, they will arrest him. A Polish so-called independent court might might demand from government to arrest Putin. And Peter Szijjártó, foreign minister of Hungary, did not waste time to respond, and he stated in response to Sikorski, talking about the independent court, which on Donald Tusk's orders refused to extradite the terrorist who blew up Nord Stream 2 pipelines, and the question mark, and then this smile of, wow, really? So basically, Peter Szijjártó trolled Sikorski, and just demonstrated that for him, I guess this is personal stuff there also, for him, all these criminals in charge of Poland are scum of humanity. That's the attitude that Szijjártó demonstrated there, in my interpretation, right? And he's correct, by the way. Polish elites, historically speaking, are scum of humanity. They never had a decent human being in leadership. Poles, never, right? Not even a single one, man. All are scum of humanity. And I feel sorry for Polish people for that, because Poland would be in a very different place, and they're in very different if they ever had their normal leaders, historically speaking, but they did not. I don't know how they did manage to end up in that situation, but they did, right? Okay. And therefore, no one should be surprised that Poland has these psychos as a leaders right now. That's a historical tradition, by the way, in Poland. TASS News Agency is also reporting that, on the topic of this freaking meeting between Trump and Putin, that will never happen. TASS News Agency actually contacted the U.S. administration with the questions, and response was, as I mentioned in today's first live stream, that U.S. administration is not planning a meeting between President Donald Trump and Russian leader Vladimir Putin in the near future, nor is planning a meeting between U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. This was stated by administration spokesperson to TASS. So I guess chapter can be closed now of this meeting that never happened, right? Anyways, let's continue with some other news. And well, when it comes to potential other hotspot, by the way, Venezuela, Washington Post come up with an article that Trump beats drums of war for direct action in Venezuela. And CIA is being unleashed, by the way, on leadership of Venezuela. Trump authorizes secret CIA operations in Venezuela and accuses its President Nicolas Maduro of illegal elections and leading a drug cartel. And we have quote here, I sanctioned this for two reasons. CIA's operations in Venezuela. Venezuela abused their open borders policy under the Biden administration, emptying its prisons, psychiatric hospitals, insane asylums with migrants heading to the United States, as well as drugs. We get a lot of drugs from Venezuela, Trump said during the interview, and this is nonsense. Of course, dear friends, we'll understand this is freaking nonsense. It's all about oil. It's all about oil. Venezuela is number one country with their oil reserves, by the way. Number one country with oil reserves. So, of course, this is all about oil, although Venezuela is rich with some other minerals too. There are some rare minerals actually also in Venezuela, but of course, oil is number one, richest country with this resource, and U.S. wants to control it. That's all, really, and therefore, it's only a matter of time when U.S. militaries will receive order to begin military hostilities. They will conduct most likely decapitation strike on Venezuela. They will conduct some ground operations too, not just air strikes, but I think ground operations too. And as I said many times before, if people of Venezuela, U.S. can get rid of regime in Venezuela easy. U.S. can kill them all, right? Political and military leadership, current political and military leadership of Venezuela. U.S. Militaries, U.S. intelligence services have quite a history of doing exactly that, killing political and military leaders of opposite side. But U.S. has not won no war in last I don't know how many decades, by the way, right? Since the Second World War, basically, U.S. lost every conflict it was engaged, any more or less large-scale conflict that it was engaged, right? U.S. militaries are not capable of winning the wars no more, right? And they were unable to win anything after Second World War. So therefore, if people of Venezuela will fight for independence of their country and independence of themselves, if people of Venezuela will refuse to be enslaved by U.S. multinational corporations or U.S. corporations, let's say, then they will fight. And if they will fight, they will receive all sorts of support from many friendly nations, right, all over the world, and they will defeat U.S. I have no doubts about it. They will defeat U.S. But if people of Venezuela are so sick and tired of difficulties that they are facing, that they no longer have a spirit to fight, in that case, of course, U.S. will have an easy walk all over their Bolivarian Republic. We will find out. In any case, seems like war between U.S. and Venezuela is absolutely inevitable at this point. Also, dear friends, there was a shooting incident in Belgrade, Serbia, right next to Parliament building, where tent was built by supporters of current President Vučić. Some psychopath went to into this tent, opened fire, and injured 57-year-old man, and then set fire to this tent. And you can see moment when fire erupted on your screen right now. Police arrived swiftly and neutralized this criminal. I did not see follow-up stories on that, who this attacker was, why he attacked her. Maybe yet another brainwashed individual, brainwashed by Western propaganda. Well, could be the case, right? But in any ways, of course, investigation will give us additional information. It is very unfortunate and dangerous, by the way, that in central part of Belgrade, some armed psychopath was, walking around and even managed to injure the person and set the fire to this camp or tent of supporters of the Vucic. This is, very dangerous, and might be indicator that who knows, maybe Western elites, maybe globalists and globalist control regimes in Europe are planning to get rid of Vucic, with some radical methods, which will include military confrontation through or armed conflict. Who knows? Anything is possible. But when we are talking about Western elites, we should understand that these are genocidal maniacs, right? Generational genocidal maniacs, and they're mentally ill creatures. Whole of Western aristocracies and elites, right? There is no single decent human being there among Western elites, so they are capable of absolutely any level of atrocity, anything to be expected from these creatures. So Serbia, of course, have to be very careful, and all the other countries, by the way, that are forced to deal with one way or another with the Western so-called elites. Also, very same Western so-called elites are planning in next several days to introduce 19th package of sanctions against Russia, according to Bloomberg. And this time around, Hungary and Slovakia will not veto this 19th package, according to Bloomberg's. And this Western propaganda outlet is reporting that Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó allegedly stated in an interview with the agency that Budapest will not oppose the sanctions as the country's core national interests are not violated. However, he noted that the sanctions against Russia will not be successful. The new package of restrictive measures include a ban on export to Russia of goods worth more than 40 billion euros. So they're going to harm their own economies, by the way. They are going to restrict their own companies to export in Russia for 40 billions, by the way. I mean, for this depressed European economy, 40 billion, by the way, is quite a lot, right? But anyways, globalist and globalist control regimes in Europe also going to ban export of some sort of minerals to Russia, ceramics and rubber. According to Bloomberg, once again, I don't know if what minerals we are exporting from Europe or ceramics, but anyways, trade restrictions are also planned against legal entities from China and India. That's quite interesting, and more than 100 tankers will be added to sanctions list. That's some of the points from this 19th package of sanction. And of course, main point of those 19th package of sanctions will be ban of import of Russian LNG by EU member states. Okay, let's see how that will go. What kind of impact that will have on European economies. We continue with some other news. TASS news agency is reporting that fire broke out at dear friends, when it comes to this topic, this 19th package, sanctions package, you might think, why Hungary is not opposing it, right? And or Slovakia. And you know what? Maybe because they've been threatened by globalists and globalist control regimes, primarily by London. Maybe they've been threatened with some terrorist attacks and stuff, right? That either Hungary agrees on 19th package of sanction, or otherwise Hungary, Druzhba pipeline will be destroyed, that supplies Hungary with their oil from Russia, and their refineries in Hungary will be destroyed that refines Russian oil. Maybe London, which is a main force, by the way, among the globalist criminals, maybe London actually issued such threats, and to demonstrate that they are serious, they authorize terrorist attack on one of the main refineries in Hungary that refines Russian oil. And I reported about it in my previous updates, isn't it? That fire broke out in a refinery, at a refinery in Hungary that uses Russian oil. Major fire broke out at the MOL, the largest oil refinery in a country located approximately 30 kilometers south of Budapest on the banks of Danube River. This happened on 20 of October. Investigation is underway, and for this moment there are no final conclusions what had happened. But I remind you, dear friends, that almost same time, on 20 of October, there was another fire explosion on a refinery in Romania that also uses Russian oil, and that refinery is actually linked to Russian Lukoil company, Russian energy company, energy giant. So I don't think this is a random stuff, right? So London most likely issued not just a warning, but actually demonstrated that they are dead serious, that they will destroy not just Druzhba pipeline, as they did already while using their proxy terrorist regime in Kiev, but they will destroy also refineries in Hungary itself, and God knows what other threats London also issued on top of that. And that's why, by the way, Budapest will not oppose this 19th package of sanctions. That's what I think is happening. And by the way, Slovakia is much in more difficult situation than Hungary is, right? So therefore, if London, or if globalists and globalist control regimes are in Europe, London first of all did manage to blackmail and terrorize Hungary, then of course they will do it much easier with Slovakia. So that's why these two countries not going to oppose 19th package of sanction. My interpretation of the situation there, maybe I am wrong on that. Maybe London never threatened nobody in this world, including Hungary. But can you believe in that? That London never threatened nobody or did not threaten Hungary? I don't. If British aristocracy, by the way, if British political class, if is known for anything, first of all, is for terror, right? Terror that they bring with them. That says it all, right? Few more news, dear friends, for this news segment. RT is reporting that Trump once again repeated claim on India that New Delhi will reduce Russian oil imports. Okay, by the way, we have not heard anything about it from India. We have not heard anything about it from Russia, according to even Western so-called media, by the way. Based on known data, Indian refineries are continuing to purchase Russian oil as usual, right? So it is anybody's guess what Trump is talking about when he says that India gonna drop its oil purchases from Russia. Okay, I mean, we will see. It's a no big deal, by the way. If Indian companies won't buy Russian oil, Chinese companies will, right? Or companies from other countries will, that have no care about what Washington has to say whatsoever, right? Also, dear friends, interesting statement from Foreign Minister of Russian Federation that preparations to build Kazakhstan's first nuclear power plant by Russian Rosatom is already in the process. Russia is their biggest partner of Kazakhstan, one of the biggest investors in Kazakhstan's economy, Russian foreign minister stated there. And well, this is good news, by the way. I mean, Rosatom is definitely a leading company when it comes to building nuclear reactors, nuclear power plants in this world. And I think Rosatom will maintain this leading position, although Americans or US administration wants, of course, to challenge Russia in this regards. But to do so, first of all, they have to be in a position to build enough nuclear power stations in their own territory, right? And to also provide these nuclear power stations with enough nuclear fuel. US cannot do it right now, and that's why they are buying nuclear fuel from Russia every year for billions of dollars, right? But they want to change the situation somehow, and one of the ways seems like Washington intends to do it is to allow to transfer basically plutonium, weapons-grade plutonium, to private companies, so that they will process this weapons-grade plutonium and will come up with nuclear fuel, which is, by the way, technically speaking, possible, but extremely dangerous, especially if we are talking about US, right? If US nuclear industry was in a position, was developed enough, by the way, and was in a position to produce great or enough volume of nuclear fuel, they probably will do it, right? But they cannot. They are in not that position, and to give these companies weapons-grade plutonium, it's such a responsible step that I don't know. U.S. citizens should be wary about it, man. Right? They should be wary about it, and no one should be surprised there if some nuclear accidents are gonna become just a day-to-day reality. You're not gonna pass weapons-grade plutonium left and right like that, man. This is just not normal. Period. I mean, do we have to discuss this topic? This is just not normal. But anyways, let me give you some details. United States has offered the energy companies the opportunity to use its nuclear waste. They call it a nuclear waste, by the way. Of course, nuclear grade plutonium decays, right? These are plutonium from thermonuclear warheads, and this plutonium decays after certain time, after a decade or 2 decades of service, and it's replaced with new plutonium. But this replaced one is still nuclear, weapons grade plutonium. By the way, it's extremely radioactive material, right? We should keep that in mind. For nuclear bomb, maybe in terms of production of their nuclear weapons, yes, they might call it a waste, but in reality, this is still nuclear and still military grade plutonium. But anyways, United States has offered their energy companies the opportunity to use its nuclear waste as a fuel for modern reactors. The British newspaper Financial Times reported documents obtained by the publication indicate that the US Department of Energy will allow companies to use up to 19 metric tons of spent plutonium from Cold War era nuclear warheads. Using this fuel will allow energy companies to obtain operating licenses more quickly. At least 2 companies, the American Oklo and the French Nucleo, according to Financial Times, intend to submit bids to receive American nuclear waste. Department of Energy decision, the newspaper notes, is the latest step by the US President Donald Trump's administration to stimulate nuclear energy, as electricity demands has begun to rapidly grow and could double over the next 10 years. This is due to a growing number of data centers using for the development of the artificial intelligence. And dear friends, if you remember, just yesterday or day before, one of the members of our community, Scooby, I believe it was Kubi, asked the question about AI exactly, and we had a discussion about future of AI, about energy that it will require, right? And I expressed my opinion that US gonna lose this AI war that is happening right now. And one of the reasons why I think US gonna lose, or West in general gonna lose this AI war, is that this technology requires a tremendous volume of energy. And look at the numbers, by the way. According to Financial Times, demand on energy in US might, electricity, by the way, in this particular case, might double in next decade. And all this due to tremendous volumes that these data centers require, right? And I don't think US is in position to keep up with this demand. Man. When you last time, and I tell you why I think so. Not because there is no resources for that, or there is enough resources in the US, but point is that US as a state, by the way, and system in the US, economical, political, and all the other systems that contribute to state building are in decay, right? When you last time, for example, hear that there was something extraordinary built in US, highest building or tallest bridge or longest bridge or some when you last time hear about some unique engineering development had happened in US decades ago, I think, right? And to me personally, that is an indicator of decay of a country. US is no longer moving upwards. US is going down, right? And therefore, I don't believe this system that is existing in US will be capable to actually manage itself in more or less adequate level and to manage with whatever obstacles this system will face, including demands, tremendous increase in demands of energy. I don't think US political class or system, or the economy for that matter, economical system, can deal with this. I really don't think so. China can, Russia can, by the way, but India can, in perspective, but US, no, man. US more, I mean, US, as time goes by the way, with every passing year, looks more and more like third world country. Let's not kid ourselves, right? As time goes by, US more and more looks like some third world country. Am I correct, by the way? Our friends from US can tell us. They live there in US, right? And they can say how it was life like 30, 40 years ago and how it is now. Is it, are people optimistic that country is moving in the right direction or not? I think her answer will be no, man. People are not really optimistic. And there is reason for that. They see with their own eyes decline in everyday life. So anyways, let's continue, dear friends. But news is quite interesting one, I think. Let's hope this private company is not gonna mess up, man, with this weapons grade plutonium. Let's hope so. Also, dear friends, when it comes to modern technologies, we have this somewhat interesting news that the European Aerospace Corporation is planning to merge their space units to create European structure capable of competing with the SpaceX of Elon Musk. This information is also coming from Financial Times. Airbus, Leonardo, and Thales are nearing agreement of merger their space businesses. with the Franco-German Airbus owning some 35% of shares. And you know what? Good luck. Good luck with that. Man, Europe is doomed too. If US is in decline, then what to say about Europe? They already lost all races, not just the space race, but literally all the races that there is, all of it, right? Europe is doomed, by the way. Give it a 20, 30 years, and this Eurasian part, this European part of Eurasian continent, gonna become, as I said so many times before, either loosely relevant or even, and most likely, completely irrelevant on geopolitical scale. That's how it's gonna be. And there also, when it comes to, I just mentioned some space and space technologies, and on this very matter, dear friends, there was a colossal explosion on our sun, right? And people on this planet on Earth not even realized how lucky they are that this ocean of charged particles went other way, not towards our planet, but other way. And I can show you, by the way, how powerful this explosion was. Something extraordinary, truly. I do have a video of that, and just look at this, dear friends. Wow. You see that? We are, I guess, somewhere here on during this explosion. Probably our planet was on a southern western side from the epicenter of explosion, eruption, massive coronal mass ejection, and according to reports that I see, Earth is in safe place now. But I mean, let's watch this video again, man. What a powerful explosion! Can you imagine? Just look at this, man. Wow. Unbelievable. And dear friends, this point that you see in the middle, this dark circle and the point, it's blocking the sun itself. Otherwise, you cannot take no images of our star. But this point, this white dot in the middle of this circle is over a million kilometers in radius. You can put like thousands of our planets, thousands of Earths in this small dot. That's how massive our sun is. And in general, you can put, I believe, million Earth-sized planets into a sun. It's just massive, isn't it? On an astronomical scale, our sun is not that big, really, compared to VY. Kuti or UT or whatever the name is, one of the biggest stars, or Betelgeuse or some others, our star is tiny, right? Main sequence star, but in scale of Earth, our sun is just massive, absolutely massive. And let's watch it once again. By the way, can you imagine what would happen to satellites and potentially even all the electrical stuff on our planet if Earth end up on receiving end of this extreme coronal mass ejection? It will do some colossal stuff, isn't it? And I will end, dear friends, a new segment on that. Hopefully you did find it informative and useful. And well, I think there was no super chat, by the way, on Rumble to respond to. Yes, there was no super chat. There was no super chat on Rumble. Let me check Boosty, by the way, if there was anything there. So yeah, nothing on the Boosty. Okay. So hopefully you did find this update informative and interesting, dear friends. If you liked my work, well, today this project, me personally, for my work, for all I did, I received only like $5 donation this morning. It was a super chat from Scooby, isn't it? And that's about it. So if you think my work worth little more, you can donate, of course. Links to my PayPal, Boosty, Patreon is under this video in description box and in the pinned comment. And well, this is it for now. Have a wonderful day, dear friends, and take care.